I want to step back tonight because, again, these all rest on the first, or about being present. Yeah? We have to, when we're not present, we don't get that things are changing. We don't get that things are unsatisfactory. And we're totally wrapped up in concepts. We don't understand anatta. We really need to be present and sensitive and intimate with experience. Not in some far out way, but just very present in order to glean those truths. In order to do that, we need to be present. But in order to be present, we have to work with, come to grips with, learn how to deal with, and practice with something called the Five Hindrances. Who's heard of the Five Hindrances? Raise your hand. Okay, most of you. These are states of mind that are very common to arise in our experience. They're not you, they're not us, we don't own them. But almost all of us, our minds they're deeply habituated to arise in our mind. And when they are in the mind, they render it pretty near impossible to either settle the mind or to see clearly. Both those things, they hinder. That's why they're called a hindrance. They don't allow the mind to settle, and therefore don't allow us to see clearly. These hindrances are desire, the mind that wants, all its forms. Desire for objects, any of the sense doors, pleasant smell, taste, sight, sound, touch, and then desire for the thoughts, pleasant thoughts and emotions. So when the mind is reaching out for that, that's the hindrance of desire. And then its first cousin is aversion, the opposite. When the mind is trying to get away from, doesn't want what's happening, pushing away, tensing against, railing against, defending, etc., etc. Again, in all its forms. When that's happening, when that energy is in the mind, it can't settle, can't see clearly. And then the third one is when there's too much energy. It's called restlessness in the mind, which includes like agitation and worry. The mind's anxiety, worry, agitation, but also sometimes just plain old restlessness. And it can be in the mind or the body. Can't sit still, can't settle. And there's too much energy, it won't settle. And then, clearly the mind's not going to settle if there's too much restlessness. And then its first cousin is the opposite, is too little energy, not enough energy, sleepiness. It's called sloth and torpor. Because it can be in the body, just low energy, just like, I can't stay awake. Which sometimes just comes from an imbalance of calm. Maybe I'll talk, when we practice, I'll talk about that. You have to balance, we want calm when we practice. It's an enlightenment factor, we want to develop it, but we have to balance it with something that's a little bit more energizing. So I'll talk about that when we practice. Desire, aversion, restlessness, sleepiness, sloth and torpor of the body, but also of the mind. And when I say mind, I don't mean sleepy, that's of the body. Dreamy, sleepy, that's still a physical thing. You know what an example of it is in the mind? When the mind doesn't want to connect with experience. It's just like, I can't be bothered. And a classic example is You wake up in the morning and you're pretty awake. And you could get up, but you don't. It's like, you roll over. You say no to the day. Like, no, I don't want to, just don't want to. That's this energy in the mind, not the inability to connect. And then the fifth hindrance is doubt, which comes in all sorts of different permutations. It's a tricky one. It is you really want to get good at knowing how doubt arises for you. Because it's a shapeshifter. It'll do it this way, and then it'll do it that way. Doubt about the teacher. Doubt about the teachings. Doubt about your ability to practice. Doubt that you're getting anywhere. Doubting yourself in any way. I mean, these are just a few, and there's so many sub-permutations of these. And that, when doubt is happening and we don't know it, it really just stops the whole show. So, when we're practicing, and I'm speaking formally, but also informally as well, just in our life, we want to see these. And one of the most important impressions I want to make to you, or with you, about these hindrances is seeing them and noticing them is good practice. It doesn't mean you're blowing it. It means, because we have to see them, because if we don't see them, they're in control. They're just running the show, and they are going to hinder any progress on the path. So you want to see them. It's not bad to see them. It's good to see them. Okay? Just drill that in. It's good to see the hindrances. It doesn't mean you're doing bad practice. And we have to, because if we don't, they'll just be there and actually get stronger. But when we notice them, when we see them, simply through seeing them, let alone taking any corrective measures, which we can do, which I may get into tonight, or might even wait till next month, because this is a big topic. So let alone taking corrective measures, just seeing them, just being aware of them begins to weaken them. They have full strength like a thief in the night. They have full strength when they're not seen, when there's no light shined on them. Once we shine the light on them, they start to lose some of their power. In the texts, the suttas, the Buddha or other monks or nuns who are speaking in the suttas, a common phrase is Mara, I see you. And so Mara is the personification of greed, hatred, and delusion, of the defiled mind. So what they're saying is, when they say Mara, I see you, they're not saying I see this person or this whatever, God or demon Mara is. What they're saying is, I'm aware that there's a defilement in my mind right now. That's what they're saying. Oh, I'm angry and I'm aware of it. Mara, I see you. That's what it means. And they say it so much, it's such a common phrase, because this is the way to overcome the hindrances, is to be aware of them. In the Noble Eightfold Path, one of the path factors is wise effort. This is effort that we need to make on the path. And this effort is in 4 areas. To cultivate wholesome mind states that have already arisen. Once they're there, feed them. To make the effort to bring about wholesome mind states that haven't yet arisen. create the conditions that are supportive for that to happen. Has anyone done loving kindness practice, metta practice? That's that part of wise effort. You are cultivating the conditions that are supportive for loving kindness to arise by saying those phrases, or however it is that you do it. And then there's the other half of the equation of wise effort. Letting go of unwholesome mind states that have already arisen, like the hindrances. And how do we do that? Well, there's all certain ways to do that. There's actually a sutta that spells them all out. And again, maybe next time we'll talk about them. But the very first, most important way is be aware of it. Know it clearly. Oh, this is in the mind right now. There's aversion in the mind. There's desire in the mind. I keep having these thoughts about this thing I want to buy. Oh, there's desire in the mind. You know, get out of the content, and this is what we're going to practice in a few moments. Get out of the content when we're working with the hindrances of the mind, and practice in terms of what hindrance is in the mind. Don't worry about what the details of what you want to buy. See the mind state of desire. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then just lastly, the fourth wise effort is to keep unwholesome mind states that haven't arisen from arising. Keep them from coming in and taking over the mind. Pay attention. As soon as you see it, quickly let it go. Don't do things that are going to be conducive for that happening, right? If one is an alcoholic, don't go into a bar. Don't do things that are conducive for something not good to happen. So these are the 4 wise efforts, and letting go of an unwholesome mind state that's already arisen is what we're practicing with when we notice a hindrance. So again, just to drill this in, this is good, right? Wise effort is good. It's a path factor. We want to practice it. We want to see the hindrances. It doesn't mean you're not meditating well. It means you're doing exactly what you should be doing. Much of this path rests upon our ability to know the hindrances. To know them, and then eventually to start to have them weaken and let them go. Some, for any given one of us, might kind of weaken and kind of fall away a bit more quickly. Others, it's like a dandelion, and they got roots that are, you maybe snap it off and it grows back. Others can be quite tenacious, depending on whatever, habit pattern our hearts and minds have gotten into. Any questions about these before we practice with them? I'm sure you're all familiar with them, right? Yeah. Okay, why don't we stand up and stretch for a little bit before. See, by standing up and stretching, we're cultivating the conditions that are conducive to aversion, for aversion not to arise, because hopefully your bodies won't be so creaky and achy. Right? Creaky and achy bodies are conditions that are conducive for us to get aversive. I don't like this. Okay, starting with a posture that's as upright as possible, and this is also helpful for balancing calm so the energy doesn't drop so much. A nice straight back goes a long ways to keeping the energy balanced. And if you're used to it, just letting the eyes come to close. And taking a few moments to settle into the body. Becoming aware of the body sitting in the chair. Forming the intention for the body to come to ease, to relax. The more we relax the body, the more we feel it. The more we feel the body, the more we're able to relax it. So see if you can tune into these two aspects that support one another. And connecting with the somatic, meaning felt sense experience of body sitting. Body sitting in this chair, in this configuration, in this moment, feels like this. Body sitting, body breathing. Connecting to one of these two meditation objects, body sitting or body breathing, and just forming the intention for the attention to rest with that experience, with that somatic experience of the body or breath. Now, one of the simplest ways to work with the hindrances is when you wake up from being lost in thought, simply notice what you were thinking about. You know, he keeps talking about the body every time I wake, every time he says, feel your body. I can't feel it. I don't know what he's talking about. Oh, doubt. Wake up from being lost in thought, replaying a tape in your mind of difficult interaction you had with a colleague at work, how you felt they wronged you. Aversion. Wake up from being lost in thought. You look and see what you're thinking about your favorite place you're going to stop on the way home to get ice cream. Desire. Noticing the body fidgeting a lot. Restlessness. Wake up from being lost in thought. Notice you were replaying this story in your mind about a difficult conversation you have to have with a family member. More restlessness, worry, anxiety. Wake up from being lost in thought. You tune into this kind of dreamy world you were in, kind of floating from one thought to another, fuzzy. Sleepiness. So when you wake up from being lost in thought, see which hindrance it is that was active. Don't spend a whole lot of time on it. If it's not clear to you within 2 seconds, let it go. Come back to the breath or the body, continue. You wake up again, check, see which hindrance was operating. Maybe you don't get lost. Maybe you see it just as it arises. Name it. Use the technique of mental noting and name the hindrance that you discover, that you become aware of. Remember, don't take a lot of time trying to figure out which hindrance was present. Simply look at your experience when you wake up from being lost in thought and see if you can tell which one it was. It's helpful to notice what your attitude is when you become aware of a hindrance. Remember, it's a good thing to notice them. It's part of what we want to do. How'd you do? Did you notice hindrances? Good. Did anyone notice any, like one that was more repetitive than the other ones? Yeah? What's your hindrance of choice? Yeah.
Sleepiness.
Yeah. Yep. That was prevalent. Yeah. Do you find that, was that just prevalent this sit, or do you find it often when you sit that that's what happens?
Before.
Okay. So, yet again, next time we'll talk more about particular ways to work with them, but that's going to be your teacher. Did anyone else have one that was particular? Yeah.
This doesn't fit into any of the categories, but this week I've been having a lot of physical pain in my left shoulder.
Yeah.
Just while meditating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it keeps me present, I'll say that much.
Yes. Yes.
But is that coming from anything that?
No, sometimes when we just get quiet and still, tension that may just not have been noticed before, in the movement, all of a sudden it's like, whoa. Or sometimes it actually unwinds. Sometimes there's energy held in the body, and we get still for an extended period of time, 20, 30, 40 minutes, it actually starts to release. And you might think, oh, that would feel good. But sometimes when stuck energy in the body releases, it's really painful. So who knows? In terms of the hindrances, though, the question would be, what was your relationship? What is your relationship to that pain? Is it like, oh, I don't like this?
I kept squirming.
Yeah. It's like, I want to change this.
Stretching.
So that's aversion.
Yeah.
Right? I want it to change. I want what's present to be different than it is. That's aversion. Yeah.
So I had my eyes slightly open.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed a spot on the floor, and I recognized that I was trying to make it into some interesting shape. and so then that was cool, because then I said, oh, well, first I thought it was aversion, that I wasn't accepting it just the way it was. Now I'm thinking it would also be desire, that I want to make it something else.
Yeah. Let's make this more interesting. Yeah.
And then that helped me to let it go.
Yeah, exactly. The clear seeing. So she was saying there's a spot on the floor, and she knows she was trying to make it into an interesting shape, and eventually saw, oh, that's desire. I want this to be, and then she said, and when she noticed it clearly, that helped it let go, it's hard to help the mind to not just let it dissipate. Don't underestimate the power of seeing things clearly.
So aversion is if you have chronic pain, and there's nothing anyone can do, they just told you have to live with it.
Yep.
So that aversion is so that's aversion then?
No, that's just chronic pain.
Okay, all right, so how does one not?
Yes, there's $1 million question. So there's chronic pain, and the question is, how does one not have aversion to that, right? How does one not go, I don't like, just ouch, I don't like this, I want it to be different. It takes a lot of practice, but it is possible. Do you have chronic pain? Have you heard of mindfulness-based stress reduction?
Oh yeah, I've been. John Kabat-Zinn was my teacher
Yeah.
back when.
Great.
I
Great.
had many surgeries on my back.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I can do.
Yeah. It's challenging. It's very challenging. Chronic body pain. It wears you down. It's. One place to start, it may not be like, oh, this is great, bring it on. It may not be that, but one place to start is see if there's any, in the teachings, it's called a second arrow. I have chronic back pain. I should have taken better care of myself when I was young. It's my fault. I should, having a story about it, about why you have it, why it's your fault, why it's someone else's fault, why, any stories around it, that's a great place to start. Because if those are happening and they're not seen, they're just going to compound it. Now you've got pain in the body and pain in the mind. So that's, removing the second arrows, removing anything extra suffering that we're adding on top of it can be huge.
What about like letting go of ownership of the pain? Like when we say my back.
Well, yeah,
it's like,
yeah. I mean,
just recognize
sure. There's,
what it is.
yeah. There's, we can bring wisdom to bear on it, and see the selfless nature of it. We can also bring compassion to bear on it. Like, ow, this is hard. This is hard to have this condition. Can we hold that? Can we care for that level of suffering? Yeah, so both wisdom and compassion are helpful.
I have something that's kind of been chronic for me in meditation, is that particularly if I feel, calm, it's when I feel like I'm a planner and I have good ideas. It's hard to let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, it comes up over and over. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, yes, that lesson would be good, or that's
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
idea.
right. I could do that with the kids.
Yeah, or,
Yeah.
if I'm writing something,
Mhm.
and it's just, because it's like I feel like I'm settled, and then these
Yeah.
ideas
What would you
come.
call that? What hindrance is that?
Well, I guess it's a desire, would that be? I
Could
don't
be.
know.
Restless,
like-
what about restlessness? I'm settled and
Well,
then
maybe, well, I guess. I
going into
never
the
thought about it
future.
that way.
I could do this, I could do that.
Yeah, and that could be.
Yeah.
I thought it's sort of like,
Yeah.
well, that's a great idea, and I don't want to let go of it.
So often there could be more than one operating together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, and then often there's more than just one together, yeah. Yep.
So is writing it down sometimes?
This is good because it's quite common. Often when we get quiet and things settle, creativity can bubble up. It's a very conducive space for creativity to bubble up. What I just do, and what I would counsel you to do, is trust that if it's really worthy to pursue, you'll remember it.
I'll remember it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, right. You're afraid you're going to forget, but trust that you'll remember it. Yeah.
I'm doing something that I'm realizing I did as a kid when I couldn't sleep. I'm plotting and planning. I'm living in these fantasy stories.
Yes.
And I'm quite happy there. But then I
Sure.
come back.
They're pleasant. They're pleasant, right?
They are.
So they're probably, that's desire. Desire for pleasant, like, you know, you're there with the breath or the body. Which do you use when you're meditating?
Breath or
The breath. Yeah, which one are you paying attention to?
The breath.
The breath. So you're feeling the breath, right? Not so exciting. Yeah? And the habit pattern in the mind to be excited, to be engaged, goes, there's not much for us here. Let's go to this fantasy. Yeah, that's desire. Yeah. Yep.
I get temperature changes in my body.
Yeah.
I'll start to feel very, very cold,
Mm-hmm.
very, very warm.
Yeah, not common. She was saying temperature changes in the body, sometimes very cold, sometimes very warm. Again, shifts in energy. Again, the question is, how are you relating to those? What's your relationship? Let's say you get really warm.
Aversion.
Yeah.
Wanting to just
Right.
take off layers.
Yeah. Like my wife in the middle of the night, tearing stuff off. Limbs are flying. I'm like cowering on the side of the bed so I don't get hit. Yeah, good. So that can be seen, right? That we can know that. Oh, there's aversion. There's not wanting the experience. So here's an important, and we're actually going to practice with this when we get back from break, and our dialogues help me remember this. With whether it's chronic pain or any of the hindrances. So you notice them, you notice that they're there. Notice now, what's it like for the heart and mind to be hindered? What's that experience like? Check and see. Know it directly in your own experience. Oh, the mind that's fantasizing and full of desire. This is what it's like. This is the experience of that. Being fearful or frustrated or angry with chronic pain. When you notice that, oh, what's that like? What's the experience of that? When we're angry about being hot, what's that like? We'll talk towards the end of tonight, we'll talk about all these in our daily life. This is really where this practice can shine, actually. What's it like for the heart and mind to have a hindrance present? Is it happy making? Is it agitating? Is it peaceful? Do you feel content? Do you feel, what is the experience of being angry, of being desirous, of being restless? What is that? We want to name it and recognize it, and then we want to what's called investigate it, or just move closer to it. What is this? This is one of the best ways to help let go of the hindrances. Because if we look closely enough, we're going to see it's not pleasant. Even the pleasant fantasies, the actual experience of it, if we look closely enough, we'll feel the agitation, the wanting. We'll feel it. We can actually know it physically and realize, oh, that's actually not peaceful. I want to do a little bit of formal practice with you and bring in this other piece of noticing a hindrance is present, and then noticing what that experience is like. So just being clear about, in your felt sense experience, what's it like for doubt to be present? What's it like for desire to be present, etc. And again, just check. If you don't notice anything, don't go looking, just continue on with the meditation. Okay? Okay. And hindrances can be very subtle. They can be very clear and overt, but they can also be very wispy and almost like a mood. Like even just as we start the meditation, like, do you want to do it? Is there any kind of little like, why are we meditating again? Well, there's aversion. If you're feeling like that, that's aversion. So they can be discrete thoughts, but they can also be kind of wispy moods that kind of blow through as well. Notice how when we become still and quiet and just turn our attention to the body, how its aliveness comes into light. We start to feel it. It's always been there. It's just in our movement, in our distraction, we're not aware of it. Like the stars coming out at night. They were there all day. We just didn't see them. The conditions weren't right to see them. Same with the body. These sensations are there the whole time, but the conditions of, just being busy and moving around a lot weren't supportive of noticing them. We sit down, get still, and there they are. So mind will wander away, and then when you wake up, notice the content. See if you can tell what hindrance was present, and feel into that experience. Literally feel into it. How does it feel in your body? And this is why it's helpful to have a baseline of being calm and still. Having a calm, still baseline in the body is very helpful, because then when anything enters the mind, in this case a hindrance, we can feel the effects of it. There'll be a difference. We have the baseline and then the experience of the hindrance, and we can then tell or feel the difference between the two.